And don't forget that I'm going to do this session with you now, and I'm just going to do the same session again at 12 o'clock. It was just in case, you know, people didn't fancy getting up at 10. So you don't have to attend the later one as well. This one is absolutely fine. Right, I'm going to share with you, hopefully, a PowerPoint all about Lady Macbeth. You can't see that, can you?
It's not visible.
Not sharing, is it? Bear with me. This always happens, doesn't it? I'll get there. But you can just do a lot of clicking. Right, you can see that. I'm going to unshare. Right, let's try and share again. Share content. Go on your laptop, you see, guys, and simplest things confuse me. Bear with. Bear with. I'm getting there. Just talk amongst yourselves. Hope you all had a nice holiday so far. You've not been working too hard. Yeah, some of you. Oh God, nothing's working. Bear with me. If you can hear snoring in the background, it's not me, it's the dog, okay? Right, let's try and share again. PowerPoint, that's what we want. Oh, guys, I'm really sorry. I'll get there in a minute. Right, no, you don't want to know about dragons in fiction. Desktop, hopefully this will do it. Right, you can see that now, can't you?
It's your home screen.
Yeah, it will come. Yeah, can you see a PowerPoint now?
Yeah.
Got it?
Yes.
Fantastic. We got there in the end. Right, now I'm going to talk all about Lady Macbeth today. I'm going to look at some quotes with you, try and sort of like draw out all the aspects of her character and her personality. And I've got lots of nice quotes as well. So what I'll do when I've finished, I'll share this recording on Share My Homework, but I'll also just share the PowerPoint on its own as well, because I think you'll find it hopefully quite useful. So, Lady Macbeth, incredibly important. Oh, come back. An introduction. If Macbeth's biggest weapon is his sword and his greatest victory is his defeat of the Norwegian army, Lady Macbeth's biggest weapon is her words, and her greatest victory is manipulating Macbeth into the murder of King Duncan. That's her power, isn't it? It's the power of her language, which is why she's such a great character to analyse, because it's all about the way she speaks to Macbeth, isn't it? It's all about the words that she uses. She believes that she has a male soul that is trapped inside a female body. She wants to transcend or go above the limits of her gender and grab power for herself. And we've obviously talked in lessons, haven't we, about how contextually very interesting that is. And obviously we'll do some more about that later on. She's also a temptress. Now, what I mean by that is this manipulative side of her personality, where she is able to manipulate her husband into doing whatever it is that she wants him to do. She's also very closely linked to the witches, isn't she? And the audience would believe her to be closely linked to the witches, which would make them feel that she's untrustworthy as well. Now, she's also very closely linked to one of the major themes, which is that of appearance versus reality. So that's all about something being on the surface is one thing, but underneath it's something very different. And we'll look at that a little bit. And also the corrupting power of ambition. Now, when we talk about ambition in Macbeth, we tend to talk about Macbeth himself, don't we? And his hamartia, his fatal flaw being his ambition. But clearly, this is her. She's not a tragic hero because she's female. So we can't quite talk about her in exactly the same terms as we do Macbeth. But there's no doubt that ambition is her downfall, and this has caused everything. It's her desire to be powerful and to be queen. She refuses to be bound by the patriarchal society in which she is trapped, but she is undone by her conscience, isn't she? And the growing distance between her and her husband. She gets this power and then realizes that actually she can't handle it. Her conscience gets the better of her. And of course, if we take it all the way to the end of the play, she takes her own life because of that, doesn't she? I've got some nice kind of like vocabulary on the right hand side there. Transgressive, somebody who wants to go across. Trans means across. So to be different, to make something different of her life. She's a malcontent, not happy or content with what she's got, which is why she has this desire for power. She is emasculating. Now, what I mean by that is she tries to take away her husband's masculinity. Emasculating, that's what that word means, with the way that she speaks to him, the way that she accuses him of being a coward. She is duplicitous. Okay, that means that she has a duality to her nature, and that means that she is tricky and manipulative. She's two-faced, is what we would call it in a very modern sort of bit too slangy for an essay, but that's what she is. It's the appearance versus reality, isn't it? It's the one thing on the surface, but then something very different underneath. Surreptitious. That means doing things that people aren't aware of what you're doing. She is malicious. We know that word mal, don't we? Like malcontent and malicious there, malevolent, all means a very negative thing. And malicious is kind of spiteful. And there's definitely the side, she's quite willing to do what she does to poor old Duncan. And she's treacherous. She's treacherous because she's willing to go against her king. She is as much King Duncan's subject as Macbeth is. And she's willing to go against that, isn't she? Okay, so let's think about her right at the very beginning. I've got some nice quotes here. Act 1, Scene 5 is her first appearance. 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 5 quotes there. So I'm going to give you just 2 minutes to read those quotes to yourself, and then we'll have a little look at them together. So 2 minutes just reading them through, and then we'll have a look at them together. Off you go. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to read those. Right, the very first quote there, my dearest partner of greatness. That's how Macbeth refers to his wife. He passionately loves his wife and treats her as an equal. How interesting, because that's not how husbands normally treated their wives in certainly Jacobean England. But she's my dearest partner. That's an important word there, isn't it? Partner. They are in this together. The superlative dearest as well expresses his depth of feeling. And I think in those early bits of Macbeth, the one thing that comes out really, really loud and clear is that this couple love each other very much, which is why he does what he does Don't get me wrong, he's very clearly ambitious and he has that desire to be king, but he also does what Lady Macbeth manipulates him into doing. He does that as much for himself as he does it for her, doesn't he? Okay, but partner, what an interesting word. We talk about partners all the time in kind of like modern language. I imagine that word would be very unusual in Jacobean England to describe someone as being your wife, as being your partner. Too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. That's how she describes Macbeth. She uses the word milk because it's associated with purity and innocence to describe her husband. She uses a euphemism. Now, I know I've talked about this a lot with my classes. She uses equivocal language. She uses euphemisms where she doesn't say he's too full of the milk of human kindness to murder Duncan, but to catch the nearest way. And she uses that as a euphemism for regicide, for killing Duncan. Pour my spirits in thine ear. Through this soliloquy, Lady Macbeth expresses her scheming nature. She schemes, she hatches plans, doesn't she? Spirits link her to the poison as she wishes to corrupt Macbeth's honour for her own advantage. And of course, the fact that she talks about her spirits, pouring my spirits into thine ear, into your ear, into Macbeth's ear. The spirits, again, that word kind of aligns her with the witches, doesn't it? Which would mean the audience would distrust her and feel that she's like the witches in many ways. You spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here and fill me from the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty. The quote that everybody remembers, but it's a good quote. Unsex me here. What does she mean? Right. She talks in imperatives in that soliloquy, in that little bit of the speech there. Demands, come you spirits. Doesn't say, oh, please come. No, she demands it, doesn't she? She calls to the witches to make her uncompromising and ruthless. Right, ruthless is a great word to describe her. If somebody's ruthless, they get what they want and they don't care what happens as a result of their actions. And she very much is ruthless. She wants to be queen so badly. She's prepared to do absolutely anything to do that. Uncompromising, she doesn't she does what she needs to do, doesn't she, without worrying about what anyone else is up to. She sees her femininity as a weakness that needs removing. She defies her gender by rejecting meekness and obedience and silence, and those would have been the traditional female roles at that time. Meek meaning not challenging, obedient obviously and silent. She is not that person, is she? The soliloquy seems like a spell of transformation, which I think is a really nice phrase, isn't it? Linking her to the witches, like I say. It sounds like a spell. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts. Yeah, it's like she's casting a spell, which again links her with the witches, with the supernatural, and therefore untrustworthy. And obviously the Jacobean audience would have associated the witches with the devil as well, and would have found that very frightening and untrustworthy and bad, for want of a better word. Then she says, great Glamis, worthy Cawdor, greater than both by the all hail hereafter. So when greeting Macbeth, this is when she first sees him after he's come back from war and she has read the letter. She doesn't use his name. She uses his titles. So she doesn't say, oh, Macbeth. No. Great Glamis, worthy Cawdor, greater than both. So she starts with his smallest title, his least important, the Glamis one, and then sort of goes towards being king. She does this to encourage his ambition. And also her words echo the witches, don't they, from Act 1, Scene 3, when they went, all hail Macbeth, Thane of Glamis, all hail Macbeth, Thane of Cawdor, all hail Macbeth, king hereafter. Look how she uses the same words as the witches in the same sort of way. Again, linking her with them. Okay. This is an important quote of hers. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. This is what she says to her husband. So why is this an important quote? It's not on this PowerPoint, but we in class, I know with my groups, and I imagine most of your teachers probably did this, found out that that quote links to a badge that King James had made after the gunpowder plot. So the audience would have linked that with treachery and plotting. So what's the significance of the language, of the vocabulary in this quote? The Jacobean audience would automatically associate the serpent with the Garden of Eden from the Bible and the fall of man. If you remember, in the Garden of Eden, we can see in the picture there on the side, Eve was tempted to take the apple from the tree and eat the apple, and it was the serpent who encouraged her to do that. Lady Macbeth, when she says this, is encouraging her husband to disregard his chivalric code of honour by becoming duplicitous. So the chivalric code of honour, or chivalry, goes from the times of the knights of old, when we had knights, and that code of honour was to be true, and all of the things that he's described as being at the beginning: brave, valiant, true. Okay, you know that warrior that's described to us by Duncan. All of those features sort of adhere to the chivalric code of honour. Now she is encouraging him to abandon those principles, isn't she, by persuading him to murder Duncan. So it's going against the way that he would normally behave, and he does it, doesn't it? And like the witches, Lady Macbeth tempts Macbeth with power, but uses her words. Now, traditionally, these words are considered a woman's weapon. A man has got his power and his strength and his ability to demand what he wants. But traditionally, women are always seen as not having that power, not having their strength, but their weapons are their words. And she's a brilliant example of this, isn't she? Because it's all language that she uses to manipulate him. That's her weapon, isn't it? Power of language, of her words. Okay, Act 1, Scene 7. I've got some more nice quotes here that we'll look at together in a sec. Now, Act 1, Scene 7 is the scene that starts with Macbeth having a soliloquy where he comes up with all of the reasons why he shouldn't kill Duncan. She arrives on the stage next to him to find out where he's at and what he's doing, and he says, "We shall proceed no further with this business." And these are the quotes that come after that from Lady Macbeth. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to just read them on your own, have a look at them, and then we'll go through them and have a look at them together. Off you go. Okay, guys, hopefully you've had a little chance to have a look at those quotes. Was the hope drunk wherein you dressed yourself? She reveals her tenacity. This is her intelligence. She is a tenacious character. She grabs things quickly, and she very quickly recognizes the way that she can persuade him and change his mind. She aggressively assaults Macbeth with manipulative techniques. She begins by implying he is a coward, a painful insult to a Thane and a recent war hero. She knows, though, doesn't she, that he is manly, masculine man. He's a warrior. He's a war hero. That the way to really get to him is to accuse him of being a coward. And she knows that. And that's straight in with that, doesn't she? Because she knows what she's doing with her words there. To look so green and pale. Now, she extends this argument by implying that he is sick and weak if he refuses her. Perhaps the reference there is to a hangover. You know how a person feels when they've had too much to drink the next day. So we can see that there's an extended metaphor there. When we have drunk was the hope drunk, and then green and pale, which is referencing a hangover. So she extends that metaphor, doesn't she? Art thou afeard to be in thine own act and valour as thou art in desire? So she uses her love and close connection to her husband by arguing she knows his heart and mind. The reference to valour is ironic given the context. Like the witches, she's turning Macbeth's fair chivalry into foul evil. Also, that word afeard, afraid, once again. Are you frightened, she says, to do what needs to be done? You desire it, but do you actually have the bravery to do what needs to be done to get what you want? So again, she's sort of suggesting that he's not brave enough, he's not good enough. Oh, you're not up to the job, is what she's saying, isn't she, in modern kind of like informal language. What beast was it then that made you break this enterprise to me? She's pugnacious, she's argumentative. She uses her words as weapons by stripping Macbeth of his humanity, calling him a beast. She questions his commitment to her and offers him little time to reply. Check the structure of this scene. Macbeth isn't given the opportunity to argue back. She just talks at him, doesn't she? He's silenced like a woman. It's like the roles are reversed in this speech. She's the one on the attack. He's the one that doesn't answer. He doesn't get the chance to answer. So really the roles are very interestingly reversed in this scene in the way that she speaks to him. When you durst do it, then you were a man. She emasculates her husband. She's taking away his masculinity by suggesting his honour is weakness. We know that he is an honourable man at the start of this, and she's suggesting that his honour, that his loyalty is a weakness, and that's why he won't do it. She makes something that ordinarily would be a positive characteristic, and she makes it negative, doesn't she? Then, probably the most famous thing that she says, when she says to him, if I'd promised this to you, that I would do something, I would have dashed the brains out, and she's talking about a baby, had I so sworn as you have done to this. So she uses this shocking imagery, and it is shocking, it shocks us, and it would have shocked the contemporary audience as well. I would have killed my own child, she says, in this violent way, if I promised you that I would do that. This expresses her intent. She is transgressive as she destroys a woman's traditional role as a maternal figure. Now, we know that obviously in Jacobean society, a huge part of a woman's role would have been as a mother, and very much still today, we think of women as nurturing and the givers of life. So to say that she would have dashed a baby's brains out absolutely goes against this idea of a woman as nurturing and maternal. This is why it's such shocking language, isn't it, when she explains to us what she would be prepared to do if she had promised Macbeth that she would do it. And again, she's kind of manipulating that love, isn't she? And using the love that he feels for her to work against him. Okay. 4 more quotes here. I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to have a look at them, and then we'll have a look at them together. This is the aftermath of the murder, when he comes back on stage and he's a bit disorientated, isn't he? He's got blood on his hands, and he's a bit shocked, I think, at what he's done. So how does she act here? Okay, 4 quotes. Have a quick read of them, and then we'll look at them together. Okay, guys, hopefully you've had a chance to have a little read of those. I heard the owl scream and the crickets cry. Lady Macbeth's strength from Act 1 seems to have faded, as she seems easily kind of like frightened and nervous. Do you remember when he comes on, they ask a lot of questions. There's about 3 or 4 very short sentence questions. She's strong, but I don't think she's quite as strong and confident as she was at the very, very beginning there, isn't she? It also foreshadows her hysteria in Act 5 in the sleepwalking scene. The animals are humanized as well, with words like scream and cry, showing how her conscience is already obsessing over the murder. There's the slight hints here, aren't they? The foreshadowing that things perhaps are going to go wrong. But then, go get some water and wash this filthy witness from your hand, she says. Right, now she takes control, and Macbeth is in shock. She uses imperatives, go, and suggests they can be cleansed easily by hiding their betrayal. This moment is an inversion of a baptism. The Macbeths are not removing sin, but killing God's representative on earth, the divine right of kings. She seems to suggest, doesn't she, with this quote, that all he has to do is wash his hands and everything will be all right. The filthy witness obviously is a metaphor for the blood on his hands. And of course, we have a huge irony there as well, because later on in the sleepwalking scene in Act 5, what is she trying to do? She's desperately trying to wash the blood from her hands, but she says she can't get off. So there's definite irony there, isn't there? Gosh, you think about how clever Shakespeare was with all of these references that happen earlier on, and then he picks them up again later. Very clever. My hands are of your colour, but I shame to wear a heart so white, she says. She fulfills her evil plot by framing the guards after Macbeth refuses to see the body again. He says, I can't go back and look at what I've done. She does go back. She takes the daggers back, doesn't she? And we know that she actually went back to Duncan's body. Well, not back. She goes to Duncan's body for the first time to get the blood from the body to badge the faces, she says, of the guards. Horrible. When you think about what she's done, it's disgusting, isn't it? She references white, linking back to Macbeth being full of the milk of human kindness, and also white, I think, being the a heart so white, the colour of surrender, but also cowardice. By suggesting she wears a heart, she implies that her heart is duplicitous. It can be changed. This foreshadows obviously out damn spot, doesn't it? My hands are of your colour. Right, we're in this together. We both got blood on our hands. But I shame to wear a heart so white. It's like she's braver than him, isn't it? She's saying there. She's maybe more masculine. She's emasculating him again. Now, the fainting, help me hence, ho. Now, this is when the death of Duncan has been found out. It was Macduff who went to the body, didn't he? And he comes going back, ring the alarm, ring the alarm. And there's panic, isn't there? And Lady Macbeth comes onto the stage and she's like, oh, what's happened? So both Macbeths use unrealistic, elegant rhetoric after the murder to express their despair that Duncan is dead. When Macbeth begins to arouse suspicion because he's gone and killed the guards, and somebody said, why did you do that? Why did he do that? She faints to divert attention. Now, I think from what we know of Lady Macbeth, there's no way she would. She's been back to Duncan's dead body and got blood on daggers and then smeared the faces of two sleeping men that she has drugged with the blood. I don't think she's the kind of woman that faints, do you? So I think there's very little doubt in our minds that she faints deliberately or pretends, to faint, to divert attention away from Macbeth. She uses her femininity, doesn't she, to imply weakness and therefore innocence. And they go, oh, look to the lady, right? And she just manages to get all the attention on her, being very female, very weak. Oh, I can't cope because this terrible thing has happened. I'm going to faint. All right. So I think that's a very clever kind of action on her part, because we know she certainly isn't weak and feeble and not the sort of person that would faint. And just when they're just saying, but why have you killed the guard? She gets all of the attention away from her husband, doesn't she? Onto her. Clever. Okay. Now, the Act 3, what starts to happen? Well, a distance starts to grow between the couple. So this couple that we saw at the beginning, who was so strong and was so in love with one another, that starts to change. And I think that the minute that they start separating from one another, and that partnership, okay, that he talked about in the beginning, my greatest partner, my greatest, dearest partner, I think he called her. But that word partner, now it begins to fracture and break apart, doesn't it? And that's when the problems really begin to start. When they're acting together, it's okay. But now when they start to separate and fracture, we have a few problems, don't we? So once again, you've got 4 quotes there. Just read them to yourself and then we'll have a look at them together. 2 minutes, off you go. Okay, guys, so be bright and jovial among your guests tonight. Now, this is the banquet scene, isn't it? And beforehand, she knows that she and Macbeth must consolidate their power with a banquet that will charm the thanes and ensure that they are accepted as king and queen. That's why the banquet is so important. Because yes, he's been made king, but he's nothing without the support of the lords, of the thanes. That's important, isn't it? So this banquet is a really important event, and she knows that. So be bright and jovial, she instructs him. Again, an example of her telling her husband how to behave. I'm not entirely sure that many Jacobean wives would have been speaking to their husband this way, but she does. Then he says, be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck, till thou applaud the deed. Now, what's being referenced there is his plot to kill Banquo and Fleance. She is not involved in that plot. He doesn't tell her what he's doing. He begins to distance himself from his wife by refusing to explain his plot to kill Banquo. His words are flattery, but the lack of information here foreshadows the isolation that both characters will feel before the end of the play. This is the beginning of the end, isn't it? This is the beginning of the relationship starting to fracture and break. The fact that he doesn't share the plot with her, or even plot with her, like the killing of Duncan was the two of them, even though she came up with the idea. They did it together. This is Macbeth acting on his own. Sit, worthy friends, my lord is often thus, and have been from his youth. Pray you, keep seat, the fit is momentary. Like in Act 2, when she misdirected the court by fainting, here she distracts the Thanes again from Macbeth's guilt-ridden outburst by claiming it is normal and temporary. She's commanding, she's authoritative, and she remains polite and warm. This is an incredible performance, isn't it, from Lady Macbeth here? Her husband looks completely insane. He's shouting and ranting at an empty chair. Don't shake your gory locks at me. He's horrified, he's jumping. He looks ridiculous. And this important banquet where they're trying to get the Thanes on side, and suddenly Macbeth is behaving in this way, you can imagine how she must feel. Does she panic? No, she doesn't. And she says, oh, it's a temporary fit. He's been doing this since he was young. Don't worry about it. Please don't take any notice. Just sit down. She's incredible here, isn't she? The way she takes control of this situation. And then she says to him, are you a man? So, like in Act 1, she questions her husband's masculinity. She's aware of the high stakes. For their political status to be accepted, they need the support of the Thanes. Here, Shakespeare makes the banquet scene both a political and a domestic drama, and Macbeth's conscience provides their downfall. So we've got the politics of the Thanes and keeping the Thanes on side and doing everything to persuade them that they are the rightful king and queen. But then in the asides, when it's just Macbeth talking to Lady Macbeth, that's where we have a bit of a domestic drama going on between the two of them. She's kind of hissing, are you a man? She's furious with him because he's going to give the game away, isn't he? The way that he's behaving, it doesn't look right. And again, she has the power and the control, doesn't she? Still at this point. Now, interestingly, in Act 4, Lady Macbeth is completely absent. She's not there. And this signals to the audience the distance, which is getting worse, isn't it, between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. The distance between the two of them is growing. She's suddenly sort of like not as important as she once was before. She's not even there. After the banqueting scene, instead of turning to his wife for support and assistance, that's spelled wrong, I need to change this PowerPoint, apologies. Macbeth relies on the witches and their prophecies to bring him comfort. Really interesting and telling, isn't it? Not her, not Lady Macbeth, but the witches, which is the worst thing he could have done. Lady Macbeth's absence is significant as it removes her voice. And her voice, her language, her words are her weapon and her strength, aren't they? And then she's relegated to a traditional female role. She's silent, isn't she? We don't hear from her at all. She no longer has agency or power. She no longer controls the plot. Now events are happening to her rather than because of her. She didn't tell him to go back and see the witches. That was Macbeth. Who decided to kill Lady Macduff and her all of her children and her household? Nothing to do with Lady Macbeth. That was Macbeth acting without her. Okay, so she suddenly is losing all of the power that she had because she is a silent woman. She's not there, and he's not consulting her. He's not talking to her. He's not plotting with her anymore, is he? Right, this is the important one, isn't it? Act 5, Lady Macbeth's guilt. This is Lady Macbeth now starting to unravel, isn't she? So have a look at those quotes, read them to yourself, and then we'll have a look at them together and see if we can work out what's going on here. Okay, guys, hopefully you've had a chance to have a look at those. And what's happening here? She has a light by her continually. It is her command. That's the gentlewoman, the lady in waiting, one of her servants, who says that to the doctor in Act 5. She has become fearful of the dark. Now, this symbolically represents both her death and the evil that she has spread throughout the play. Remember that the witches were described as the instruments of darkness, and Macbeth has black and deep desires. So this desire for light, that she's frightened of the dark, is symbolic, isn't it, here? And very, very telling, giving us a lot of information there. So she's frightened of the dark now, isn't she? She wants a light continuously. Out, damned spot, out, I say. Now, interestingly, she speaks in prose and not verse in this scene. Now, all the way through, all of the thanes, the lords, the important characters, the noble characters, the higher class characters, all speak in verse, blank verse. The servant type characters, like the porter, speaks in prose, which is the kind of language that we'd have in a Christmas carol, in a novel. It's not verse. Now, she is now speaking in prose. And this shows, this is Shakespeare demonstrating to us her damaged state of mind, okay, because she can't speak in prose. Sorry, she can't speak in blank verse, and her fall from a noble position to a lowly, desperate place. So it's symbolic and important that she no longer speaks in blank verse. Like Macbeth in Act 3, Lady Macbeth is haunted by the blood of her victims and tortured by her conscience. Out, damn spot, out, I say. And what she's doing at that time is she's washing her hands, desperately rubbing her hands, isn't she, to try and get the blood off them. She's haunted by the blood, isn't she? The Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now? Lady Macbeth is foreshadowing her own death by considering the afterlife. Where is she now? Now, clearly, she wasn't consulted. The Thane of Fife, is Lady Macduff, who Macbeth had killed on his command, didn't he? Where is she now? What kind of afterlife is there? She's thinking about the afterlife and thinking about death, isn't she? All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand. Although she and her husband never share the stage again, then we don't see them together again at all now. She shows a glimmer of their previously strong connection, with having a similar thought too. Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? Which is what Macbeth said after he had killed Duncan. So notice the similarity in their words, the similarity of their idea. So they're still connected, but they're not together, are they? Also, I think the blood clean, not sweetened, this little hand. All right, now this is a very different Lady Macbeth. This is her seeing her hand as little, not strong and powerful, but it's a little hand. She's lost that power now, hasn't she? Then we have a cry within of a woman. Her death off stage might be seen as anticlimactic. I know when we read this, it's kind of like, what's happened? Why didn't we see it? What has she done? How did she take her own life? We don't know, do we? But it shows her lack of agency, her lack of power and strength by the end of the play, that we don't even get to see what happens to her. She's not that important. She's not that powerful. She's not that strong anymore, is she? At the time, Christians believed that people who commit suicide go to hell as a result. She is committing the ultimate sin, isn't she, by taking her own life? The Christian audience would definitely have seen that in a very, very poor light. So we don't get to see what actually happens to her. And, I just think all we have is a cry within of a woman, and that's her death. Just shows how very little power she has at this point in the play. And then Macbeth said, oh, she should have died hereafter. He's unable to mourn his wife. The speech when he finds out that she's taken her own life, he doesn't really say much. This couple that had so much love for each other at the beginning, to just go, oh, she should have died hereafter, just shows that he's unable to mourn her properly. He just laments the meaninglessness of life. And it's kind of sad, isn't it, really, that he I think he's so, at this point, he's been to see the witches. He can see that the British troops are kind of withdrawing upon him. He doesn't have the time to mourn her, or even the mental capacity to mourn her properly at that stage, does he? Okay, so that's a sort of revision of who she is and the quotes that are important. Like I said, I'll share this PowerPoint with you because I think it's got some nice kind of like revision ideas. So how do we write about it? What do we do in an essay? And I always really like to talk with my groups about the big idea. Now, the big idea is, what do you want to say about Lady Macbeth? What is your idea that you're going to say? And the big idea would generally come from the essay question. So if the essay question was about her being powerful, your big idea is going to have to be something that's linked with power, okay? And we would talk about her being powerful at the beginning, and we have all the evidence and the quotes that we've looked at, haven't we? And then that power, for example, if it was a power question, disappearing and lessening as the play progresses. So how do we start a paragraph? Well, we'd start a paragraph with a topic sentence, we could call it, or the big idea about her character. And I think sometimes if you can get that first sentence written down, the rest of it all becomes easier. I often see students sitting in exams and assessments and oh, how do I start? What shall I write, miss? What should my first sentence be? Well, obviously, when you're doing the assessment, I can't tell you that. You're on your own with that. And that first sentence, link it to the question, but get across your big idea. And I'll show you an example in a couple of slides' time. Briefly explain the scene you wish to refer to, and then you add any evidence. So it might be at the beginning of the play, she is presented as being a powerful character, and then you would back that up with a quote of some description, okay, that would go with that. So you briefly explain. You don't need to know specific acts and scenes. Some of them stand out, don't they? Act 1, Scene 5, I can always remember that's the unsex me here, but you can use vague phrases that are absolutely fine. At the beginning of the play, she's this. As the play progresses, she's that. At the end of the play, blah, blah, blah. So do not worry if you can't remember exactly what act and scene a quote happens in. It doesn't matter. It's not important. Then you explain in as much detail as possible how and why the evidence supports your opinion. Why are you using this quote to say that she's powerful, for example, at the beginning? And then the most important thing is the zooming in. Zoom in. That's when you explore a key word or a phrase and using any terminology if it's relevant. I've said this certainly to my class a lot. The exam board don't like technique spotting, especially if you go, oh, it's a metaphor, and then leave it at that. Far, far better to explain what the language is doing, why Shakespeare has used it, how has Shakespeare used it, and most importantly, what's the effect. And don't forget that when you're analysing language, that's a key technique. It's terminology. It's something that Shakespeare has specifically used for an impact. Okay, so when we talk about language, you're doing absolutely the right thing. You don't lose marks for not knowing it was a metaphor, but you gain marks if you can explain exactly why he's used that word or phrase and what the effect is of that word or phrase. So don't panic about not recognizing what all the techniques are. Good analysis of the language is way better. And then obviously when you've zoomed in at the end of your paragraph, you might then zoom out. You might link it to another quotation somewhere else in the play. a key moment, or the historical context. Now, context is important, and certainly with Lady Macbeth, the context about women in Jacobean society is relevant and important. You do not need to have a contextual point in every paragraph. You'll probably reference context in your opening paragraph, and you might link it again in your final paragraph, but it doesn't need to be in every single paragraph. There's no need for that, okay? But as long as you reference context, then you must, because it's one of the assessment objectives. So, I think for Lady Macbeth, it's really easy to talk about context because it's completely relevant and important, isn't it? That what an unusual woman she is in the patriarchal Jacobean society, and how completely in line with what the Jacobeans thought about the power of women. Once she gets that power, she can't cope with it, can she? She falls apart. She's not able to handle the power. So let's have a quick look at the bands that we've got here. I've just got 2, 3, and 4. Your teachers will look at you with the higher ones. So for band 4, which will get you, I think, about a 5 or a 6, you focus on the task. Now, this appropriate register. Now, what that means is keeping your language formal. Sometimes in class and sometimes when I'm explaining things, I might use informal language and informal kind of like modern ideas. So, you know, I might go, oh, Lady Macbeth is completely losing the plot at this point. That's not formal language. It's kind of like a modern sort of a phrase and not the kind of language that you would use in an essay. So your essay language needs to be formal. Thoughtful understanding of the extract and the wider text. Now, remember, and I'll have a look at a question with you in just 1 second. There are 2 bullet points at the bottom of the question. One bullet point is specifically about the extract that you've got in front of you, and the second bullet point is about the play as a whole. You need to talk about both. It's not a 50-50 split. You don't need to do half and half. You might well talk about the extract more than the play as a whole, but as long as you do both, you're doing the right thing. The next thing there is a secure analysis with personal response. That means that it's you're getting across your ideas, and effective use of textual evidence. Good quotes, effective use. So if you're writing about Lady Macbeth and power, that the quotes that you use show her power or her lack of power. And exploring language, we need a discussion of the writer's use of language. That's what this play is all about. Your essay, sorry, is all about language, isn't it? And the use of language. You're not retelling the story. It's not a test of how well you know the plot of Macbeth. So whatever you do, don't just retell the story at the beginning. She's like this, and then this happens, and then that happens, and then this happens. That's not what we're doing. The examiner, who'll be your teacher actually this year, isn't it, knows the plot of Macbeth very well, thank you. It's language. It's all about language analysis. So you know that's what you need to be doing, is picking apart quotes, zooming in and looking at what language is used. A thoughtful reference to meanings and effects, right? Effects. What is the effect of the word partner in that quote at the beginning? Why is this an interesting word? What's the effect of it? What does it suggest to us about the relationship between the two of them? References to form and structure. Now, all we mean really for structure is the structure of the play, in the sense that how for Lady Macbeth it charts her downfall, her losing of power, this strong, powerful character at the beginning, to the character who sleepwalks, has completely lost her mind, and actually takes her own life at the end. And the use of apt. Apt means apt means the right terminology. Now, I'll repeat it again. Don't get hung up on simile and metaphor and personification, the extended metaphor, blah, blah, blah. If you can't remember, it's great if you can remember what those things are, well done. But if you can't, Just zoom in on language and look at the power of the language and the words that he's used. So all of that, how does that work if we were looking at a question? This is a question that I'm sure you've all looked at before. I know I've used it in class, but I don't think we've answered this one yet, but we probably will do to add to your portfolio of evidence. This is what an assessment question will look like, and the question that you'll do in 2-3 weeks' time will look like this. They always do. So it will say something like this. Read the following extract from Act 1, Scene 5 of Macbeth, and then answer the question that follows. So it will always tell you where the extract comes from. So as soon as you see Act 1, Scene 5, you think, oh, crap, right, this is right at the beginning of the play. That's helpful because I know that she's powerful at this point. At this point in the play, Lady Macbeth is speaking. She's just received the news that King Duncan will be spending the night at her castle. Okay, then we have the piece of text. Then underneath we have the question. Starting with this speech, explain how far you think Shakespeare presents Lady Macbeth as a powerful woman. Lovely question, lovely and straightforward. Write about how Shakespeare presents Lady Macbeth in this speech, so that's about the extract, and then how he presents Lady Macbeth in the play as a whole. And you'll see it's worth 30 marks, but you also get an AO4 of 4 marks, and that's 4 extra marks are available for your spelling, your punctuation, your grammar, your paragraphing. Valuable marks because they could be the difference between grade boundaries. This is English literature, but it's still important that you write properly and that you punctuate your work and you. Oh, and do not forget that all of the characters' names always, always, always have capital letters. So Macbeth, Shakespeare, Lady Macbeth, Banquo, all always have capital letters. Okay, right. So what's the speech here? I'm going to very quickly kind of like read it through, and then I'll just have a look at a kind of like the kind of paragraph that you could write in response to this. Okay, here it is. The raven himself is hoarse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here, and fill me from the crown to the toe top full of direst cruelty. Make thick my blood. Stop up the access and passage to remorse, that no compunctious visitings of nature shake my fell purpose, nor keep peace between the effect and it. Come to my woman's breasts and take my milk for gall, you murdering ministers, wherever in your sightless substances you wait on nature's mischief. Come, thick night, unpole thee in the dunnest smoke of hell, that my keen knife see not the wound it makes, nor heaven peep through the blanket of the dark to cry, hold, hold. So probably the most important speech that she makes. We learn so much about her in this moment. She's there on the stage on her own. She's just read the letter from Macbeth telling her about the witches and what they've said to him. And bang, straight away, the fatal entrance of Duncan. There appears to be absolutely no doubt in her mind already that Duncan will die so that her husband can become king and she can become queen. Look at the use of my battlements. Now, again, we could make a contextual link here, couldn't we? That actually under Jacobean law, women had no rights of ownership. They didn't own things, which is incredible, isn't it? So everything belonged to a woman's father when she was younger, and then she got married, and then everything she had belonged to her husband. So the fact that she calls them my battlements certainly tells us a lot about her power or her belief in her power at this point in the play. We have her appealing to the spirits, so aligning herself with the witches. Unsex me here is when she's talking about she wants to become more masculine. She's trying to get rid of her feminine qualities because she feels that they will stop her behaving in the way that she wants to behave. She wants to be full of cruelty. She doesn't want to feel remorse, she says, doesn't she, in this extract? She says, Come to my woman's breasts and take my milk for gall. Incredibly important. She doesn't want to be the nurturing, life-giving, feminine figure. She wants poison. She wants the ability to kill, all right, and go against everything that femininity and being a woman stands for. You murdering ministers, she again appeals to the spirits, and she wants her actions to be hidden by dark, telling us that she's perfectly aware of her actions and how evil they are, and that she's behaving in an evil way. There's no other word for it, by planning the death of a king. So what might that look like? Okay, a big idea paragraph. With a question like this, the power question, it's you having a really clear idea in your mind about what you want to say about Lady Macbeth and power. And you will use your big idea at the beginning of the essay, but you will also use your big idea at the beginning of every paragraph that you write, because it's a topic sentence. It's kind of explaining to whoever's reading your essay what this paragraph is going to be about. So let's have a look at this. Lady Macbeth describes Duncan's entrance as fatal straight after hearing he will be coming to her castle, which shows power because she's capable of making instant decisions. So straight away, with that opening sentence, my big idea is that she has power, okay? She wants power. She shows power. She has power at this stage, doesn't she? And it's the use of the word fatal that tells us this. I had to fit this paragraph. I didn't want to make it too long, but you could go in and zoom in then on the word fatal, telling us that she uses the word fatal to tell us that Duncan will die in her castle, because that's what the word fatal means, doesn't it? Shakespeare's use of language in this extract, not Lady Macbeth's words, but Shakespeare's use of language, because these are Shakespeare's words, aren't they? He's carefully written them to get across what his point about her, suggests that Lady Macbeth is calling for power from evil spirits to help give her strength to carry out the murder of Duncan. She wants to get rid of her feminine side. Unsex me here, she says, which suggests, or we could say the use of the word unsex, or the phrase unsex me, suggests that she sees being a woman as weak. All right, she knows that to be feminine, to be a woman, is a sign of weakness and her inability to behave in the way that she needs to kill Duncan, or at least to get Macbeth to kill Duncan. This is also shown with come to my woman's breast and take my milk for gall. And it's the word gall that's important here, isn't it? It's as if she thinks that she will only be able to carry out the act if her female side is replaced with poison, with gall. To take away the milk, I would analyse this further when I've got more kind of space. Milk being the life-giving function that as a woman that she's got. She creates life, but she sustains life, doesn't she? And that's what her milk is for. She doesn't want that. She wants that gone. Take it away, she says, and give me poison instead. Now, then we have this next bit. On the one hand, Shakespeare might be showing her to be a powerful woman, capable of selling her soul to the dunnest smoke of hell in order to get what she wants. Clearly, she is powerful, isn't she? She wants that. However, and this is really nice analysis, you don't necessarily do it all the time, but it's really good analysis if you can see both sides of something. Yes, it's powerful, but it could also suggest that she isn't powerful at all and knows that her female weakness has to be destroyed in order to give her the strength to do what needs to be done. She knows she's weak because she's female. That's why, isn't it? She wants to get rid of that feminine side of her nature. And then on the end, I just made a contextual point. In the Jacobean patriarchal society, patriarchal meaning run by men, women had very little power. So Shakespeare is reflecting this view in his characterization of Lady Macbeth. And there's just a little contextual point at the bottom there, isn't there, where context is important, and it fits perfectly well in an opening paragraph. Okay, now if anyone would like to ask any questions, I don't want to talk at you anymore. I don't want 2 hours is way too long. So I'm quite happy to kind of like call it a day at this point, unless anybody would like to ask me a question. You can ask me a question about what's happening when we go back, or about what I've just talked about with Lady Macbeth. I will share this on Share My Homework, and I will share the PowerPoint as well, because I think it's got lots of nice quotes in which you might find useful for revision purposes. Okay, so would anyone like to ask me any questions? And if you don't want to do it in front of everybody, that's absolutely fine. But you know my you can contact me and Share My Homework, obviously, or you can email me if you need to ask any questions about what I've just gone through. Sure. Any questions? Brilliant. Guys, thank you so much for attending. It's much appreciated.
Miss, I don't get the soul bit where it says she sells her soul.
Right. She sells her soul because she's it's kind of like it's a phrase to describe what she's doing. The fact that she aligns herself with the spirit is she's giving part of herself away, her goodness, her femininity. To put it in kind of like a more slangy way, she sells her soul to the devil, doesn't she? Have you ever heard that phrase before, where we talk about someone making a pact with the devil to get what they want? And she's willing to get rid of her feminine side that unsexes me here. She's willing to get rid of all her femininity so that she can become more powerful. All of her goodness, yeah, gone. And that's what she's doing. She's selling her soul. She's asking in return for that the ability to be more masculine, but to be evil and to carry out those acts. Does that make sense? That's what she's doing. It's almost like a pact. It's like a deal, isn't it? And she kind of knows that she can't do that on her own. That's why she appeals to the murdering ministers. Come, you spirits. Yeah, she needs the evil, if you like, of the witches, who are obviously linked with hell, aren't they? And the devil, I think. And she's willing to say, take my milk for gall. It's like a deal with the devil, isn't it? You have this, take this away from me and leave me with the ability to do these evil acts. Anybody else? Guys, thank you so much for attending. When we go back, if you're unsure about anything, please speak to your classroom teachers. Or, of course, you can come and find me anytime. You know I'm up on the 3rd floor with you guys all the time. My form room is, well, it used to be called M2. What's it called now? G32. And, you know, I'm always around. So please ask me if there's anything you're unsure about. And just enjoy the rest of your holiday now, won't you? Enjoy. Don't revise too much. Have a good time, guys. And thank you very much indeed. Take care.